Reporting child abuse and neglect is a responsibility mandated by Texas law. In order to bring clarity to your role in identifying and reporting suspected child abuse and neglect, and to promote awareness, Edinburgh Consolidated Independent School District has created this short presentation. This presentation summarizes some basic information taken from the Family Code and the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. In no way does the information found in this presentation replace or supersede the information found in the Texas Family Code or the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. Physical abuse is defined as physical injury that results in substantial harm to the child, such as bruises, fractures, or death. It also can include a genuine threat of harm even if there is no visible injury. Sexual abuse is defined as sexual conduct harmful to a child's mental, emotional, or physical welfare. This includes fondling a child's genitals, penetration, indecent exposure, and exploitation through prostitution or producing pornography. Emotional abuse is defined as an action that results in a marked impact on a child's growth, development, or psychological functioning. Emotional abuse includes extreme forms of punishment, such as confining a child in a dark closet, habitual scapegoating, or belittling to the point that it results in noticeable effects on the child's daily functioning. Physical injury or the genuine threat of substantial harm can come from actions such as hitting, kicking, biting, shaking, choking, or any other violent act against a child. This definition does not include an accident or reasonable discipline that does not expose the child to a substantial risk of harm. An individual can also commit abuse under the Texas Family Code by causing or permitting a child to be in a situation in which he or she sustains a mental or emotional injury. Failing to make a reasonable effort to prevent physical or sexual conduct that is harmful to a child. Compelling or encouraging a child to engage in sexual conduct. Using a controlled substance in a manner or to the extent that it results in physical, mental, or emotional injury to a child. Causing, permitting, or encouraging a child to use a controlled substance. Neglectful supervision means placing a child in a situation that requires judgment or actions beyond what the child is physically or mentally capable of doing, and that results in bodily injury or a substantial risk of immediate harm to a child. Medical neglect is failing to get or follow up with medical care for a child when the lack of care results in physical injury or in a marked impact on a child's growth, development, or functioning. Physical neglect is the failure to provide a child with food, clothing, or shelter necessary to sustain the life or health of the child. Physical neglect can include a situation where the home environment presents a health or safety threat to children. Abandonment and refusal to accept parental responsibility are two other categories of neglect. Failing to protect a child from any situation described above also falls under the definition of abuse and neglect. Let's review some examples of neglect. Leaving babies, toddlers, or young children home alone, using illegal drugs or excessive amounts of alcohol while caring for a child, or exposing a child to someone who is a known child abuser or sexual predator constitutes neglectful supervision. Medical neglect may be failing to provide a child with medication or medical care necessary to treat a diagnosed medical condition such as diabetes or epilepsy. An example of abandonment and refusal to accept parental responsibility is leaving a child without arranging for necessary care and demonstrating an intent not to return. Failing to allow a child to return home or to arrange for necessary care by others after the child has been absent from the home for any reason, including having run away, is another example. An individual can also commit neglect under the Texas Family Code by placing a child in or failing to remove the child from a situation that exposes the child to sexual conduct that is harmful. Placing a child in or failing to remove the child from a situation in which the child would be exposed to acts or omissions that constitute abuse. If the person responsible for a child's care, custody, and welfare fails to allow a child to return home without arranging for necessary care after the child has been absent from the home for any reason, including having run away. A person responsible for a child's care, custody, or welfare includes a parent, guardian, managing or possessory conservator, or foster parent of the child, a member of the child's family or household as defined by Chapter 71 of the Texas Family Code, a person with whom the child's parent cohabitates, school personnel or a volunteer at the child's school, personnel or a volunteer at a public or private child care facility that provides services for the child, or at a public or private residential institution or facility where the child resides. The Department of Family and Protective Services also investigates other perpetrators. Please make a report to the Department of Family and Protective Services if one or more of the following people are believed to have abused or neglected a child: a parent, guardian, or foster parent, a member of the child's family, such as grandparent or uncle, or a member of the child's household, such as an unrelated roommate of the parent, a parent's boyfriend or girlfriend, regardless of whether that person lives in the home, personnel or a volunteer at the child's school, personnel or a volunteer at a daycare or residential facility. The Texas Family Code requires professionals to make a report within 48 hours of first suspecting abuse, neglect, or exploitation of children, and the Human Resources Code requires a person having cause to believe that an elderly or disabled person is in the state of abuse, neglect, or exploitation to report the information required immediately. You may be subject to criminal charges if you suspect abuse or neglect and you knowingly fail to report it. If you knowingly file a false report, for example, telling the Department of Family and Protective Services that the child has injuries when there clearly are none, you may be subject to civil and/or criminal liability. There are two ways to report abuse. The first is by calling the abuse hotline at 1-800-252-5400. Calls may be made 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or by using the secure website at txabusehotline.org. No email reports are accepted. This website is only for reporting situations that do not require an emergency response. An emergency is a situation where a child, adult with disabilities, or person who is elderly faces an immediate risk of abuse or neglect that could result in death or serious harm. Call 911 or your local law enforcement agency if the situation is an emergency. Call the Texas Abuse Hotline at 1-800-252-5400 if you believe your situation requires action in less than 24 hours, if you prefer to remain anonymous, if you have insufficient data to complete the required information on the report, or if you do not want an email to confirm your report. It is the responsibility of professionals to report and the responsibility of the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services to investigate allegations or suspicions of abuse or neglect. However, CPS recognizes that district or school policy may instruct certain employees, such as nurses or campus police, to document injuries on a child's body. Every child deserves to be safe.